Protein powders. Are they a game changer for our fitness goals and weight loss? Let's find out. Welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Fit, the podcast where we unpack the science of sustainable weight loss and fitness for those over 40. I just realized we did not greet today, Twain. So, hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm 20. I think
So
we
there
didn't
we
do that in the
go.
last one
20,
as well.
what's it, 20
Yeah.
episodes in, and we're still not the professional type.
Maybe that gives people reassurance that we're just like that. Just a little bit further along the journey, but we're just like you guys, We're just
Relatable.
figuring things out as we go along.
All right, so today we're looking at building and maintaining muscle mass is crucial as we age. Protein
Yep.
is a
Yep.
cornerstone of that process. So today we're going to dive deep into the world of protein powders. Whether you're a gym enthusiast or simply looking to stay strong and healthy, this episode is for you.
All right.
Okay, did that intro help to put us back on track? Do we come
I think
across a
so.
little bit more professional now?
I think so. I would hope so. Protein
Awesome.
powder, right?
Protein powder.
Protein powder.
So first thing first, let's set the foundation as we usually do. What
Mhm.
is protein powder? If you have to define that in simple terms and explain the different type of sources that we get, what is
Oh,
protein?
sure. So protein powder is essentially generally it's derived from whey, but there are other sources of it we should go through. But it's basically a powdered form of protein to which you add a liquid. It can be just water, can be milk, whatever it is, and you mix it up, and it just provides you a very, very rich and high source of protein for a relatively low amount of calories. I mean, if it's a good quality protein powder, that's what it'll do. Okay. I've seen shitty ones where the macros just don't make sense. You might as well go and buy a packet of milk or something. But yeah. Was it concise? Did I
I
do
think
it?
so. We're getting quite good at this, huh? All right, so
Yeah.
let's move on to the thing that people want to know is like why should we be looking at protein powder for people over 40?
Yeah. And I believe I've briefly mentioned this in one of the previous episode, I believe, when we did supplements 101. So protein powder, especially in a food climate that is not very protein rich, which is usually Southeast Asian climates, just Asia in general, it's not super protein rich. It can be very, very useful to help you hit your protein needs. Okay. While there's a lot of research that shows that, especially for just general fitness and weight loss, the amount of protein you need should not be, bodybuilder level kind of proteins. It should still be relatively moderate to moderately high. And a lot of people, as research has and surveying has shown, a lot of people actually undereat the amount of protein because it's not a very common thing for a lot of people. If you think about it, most people don't have an actual taste preference for protein. I mean, males generally do because men generally prefer like steak and chicken and something like of those natures. I noticed the difference tends to be like women tend to not really like very much protein. They don't actively eat it. They like noodles or just eating a lot of rice or eating cakes and a lot of like carb and fat based stuff. Interestingly enough, it seems like women's protein needs are actually a bit lesser than men to some degree. Or they have a higher tolerance for like lower protein diets without losing very much muscle. And I think a large part of that is also just because biologically the way women build muscle is not as highly dependent on like testosterone or some other factors that are a bit more specific to the male biology. Yeah. So there's some really cool stuff. And because I've dieted females down for competitions before, I've actually noticed that for a lot of them, even the more higher level ones, they don't really need that much protein. And that's a great thing because then that means that even though the calories are lower, they can still kind of get decent amount from other foods.
Okay. Like in previous episodes, we've spoken a lot about this condition that affects people over 40, this the sarcopenia.
Yes,
Now, we always say that one of the best things to go and do to counter that is to go and do resistance training.
100%.
Now,
Yeah.
does the amount of protein that you're intaking also play a part in that?
Uh, yeah, I would say it's more related to how much you are doing. So if you're doing a ton of resistance training and you're always like you're lifting weights every day, right? And you're pushing really hard, yeah, you probably will need a ton more protein, a lot higher than the average person, just because you need enough for the recovery component of things.
Okay.
Yeah. But otherwise, if you're just going 3 to 4 times a week, you're still training hard, about 3 to 4 times a week. Yeah, moderate to moderately high should be good enough for you. You could, and this is more of like just making sure you cover your bases so that there's no stone left unturned kind of thing. You could go to the upper end of that, but usually more beyond that is not necessary, and oftentimes logistically a very big challenge for most people.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that is
but
obviously why
but
we
but
bring in the protein powder, right?
exactly, yes, I was just going to say, but that problem is easily solved by adding in protein powder.
Okay. So,
So back to this
yep.
thing, it's really the convenience of it. Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about protein as well, the big thing that it plays a part, it gives you that a good satiety level. You know, when you're taking in your fair amount of protein, you're more satiated than taking in like a bunch of carbs, where it's like, wow, you're like so full, and then an hour later, I'm so hungry, so hungry. Everything's digested. Protein tends
Generally, yeah.
to last longer for that as well. So it
Yeah.
helps you to control your appetite a little bit better, at
Yes.
least
Yes.
from my experience that I've seen. So this would also then help to play a part in the weight loss and weight management, right?
100%. I would say though that for protein powder, it would have a lesser of a satiating effect compared to actual whole food proteins,
Mm.
mainly because the way protein powder is made, there are different types, but just generally whey protein powder or most protein powders are built such that they are or made such that they are easily digested and they assimilate into the bloodstream a bit quicker. So the satiety level of things might not necessarily be as impactful as, let's say, if you eat a piece of chicken, right? It's going to sit in your stomach for a bit while it's slowly being digested, moved around, and slowly pass through the digestive system. Yeah, as opposed to something like whey protein, which will go through the system a little bit quicker, or
Okay.
protein powder. Yeah,
But when it comes to whey protein is in the powder,
yeah.
is the digestion of that, is it a lot quicker? Like the absorption into the body, is it a lot faster
Yes.
than, as we say, eating that chicken breast and not chewing properly and this big thing just sitting there in the tummy?
Yeah, no, definitely, because the powder form is already in a sense you can think of it as pre-digested just because it's broken down into smaller, like really smaller bits already.
Yep.
Whereas something like chicken is like you might chew a little bit and then you swallow it down and there's still like chunks, right? So that needs to be broken down further as it goes through your system. So it definitely is way faster. It enters the bloodstream a lot faster than almost any other kind of protein. Yeah.
Okay. So if we were to move on to like now going to where we see the why, but we want to now go and actually buy the protein, buy the powder.
Mm, yeah.
Um, what are the factors that we need to consider when selecting a protein powder?
Uh, okay, so the first thing I would say is the type of protein powder that you want to buy.
Mm.
Okay, and let me go through the various types first, and then you kind of understand what I mean by that. Yeah. So there's the regular whey protein powder that's made from dairy. So how whey is made is very simple. When you make cheese and there's that like watery, milky runoff, that's essentially whey liquid. And then what they do is they collect that liquid, they filter it out, and dehydrate it out to get like the powder form. And then they filter it a few rounds just to make it, I guess cleaner, into this form that we know as whey concentrate. Yeah. So that's
Mm.
that's kind of how like whey is made. It's dairy based. And then there's other forms of protein powder that's maybe more plant-based. And so those would be stuff like, and traditionally the most effective plant-based protein powder is like soy protein. So soy protein is very comparable to regular whey protein. Like you could take either or, and one's substitutable for the other. Just that if you're vegetarian or you don't digest whey very well, hey, that's a great option, alternative option. Yeah. There is also, and this is very, very much less common, it's egg white protein. And egg white protein is exactly what it suggests. It's just dried egg whites turned into a powder that
Oh.
that is soluble enough for you to mix it. Um, it digests a bit slower than whey, but it still digests pretty fast. So it's still a great option. Okay. In terms of muscle protein synthesis, it's actually surprisingly not as complete and effective due to the composition of the amino acids in there, but it's still a good option. right? So I'm just going into a bit of the nuance there for it.
Mm.
So if it's something that maybe you tolerate a lot better than maybe even soy or whey protein, then hey, that's an option. But usually you would try the other two first and you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I get a bit of bloating or whatever. And then you try this. And then there's other plant-based options that are like pea protein or hemp protein. Now, these ones are pretty much more subpar versions of protein powders that you can get. Again, most people will take these because they have some issue with taking soy protein. Yeah, or maybe they're completely vegan or something. I don't know. Nowadays, I'm not too particular about being, veganism and vegetarianism. So I'm not the best person to ask. But like, there's some clients that I've had who are like, hey, I can't take soy or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. There's pea protein, there's hemp protein. The only issue is that for these ones, they are not complete what we call amino acid profiles in them. So because of that, they're missing certain amino acids, and you kind of need to pair them up or take a bit more of a complete range of proteins, which is what you need to do anyway if you're a vegetarian or vegan. So those are the kind of like different types of proteins. Mostly you'll be choosing it based upon the digestibility for yourself, because different whey protein products also can actually have different digestive effects for different people. There's some brands which like some clients take very well, and then they try some other brands and then it's like, oh no, they get a bit of gassiness, a bit of bloating. So it really depends. There's a bit of an individual basis here.
Let me see. I always found is like if I take any non-soy, soy lecithin protein, I find it
Yeah.
doesn't mix as well, and it ends up tasting a bit.
Non-soy as in like whey protein?
Yeah, like non-soy, the one that doesn't have soy lecithin inside. So I found some
Oh,
whey
okay, okay.
protein that
Got it.
still has the lecithin inside the whey,
Yes.
and I find that those they tend to mix a lot better than the ones that do not have.
Ah, I
Have
see.
you
Yeah,
experienced
because
this as well, or is it just me that doesn't mix things properly? Because when I drink it, it tastes like a bit chalky.
oh,
Very-
I see, I see.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting that you bring this up. I mean, like soy lecithin itself is an emulsifier. So the whole point of it is that if you have it in there, it helps you to bind things into
Mm.
like a smoother texture, right?
Yeah.
But I've never really gone and read the ingredients to check whether they have soy lecithin in it or not. So this is something new to me in the sense of what you're bringing up. I have noticed, yes, I have noticed there are certain protein powders that don't mix as well, and then certain protein powders that mix better. But for the most part, I use my shaker bottle with the little metal ball in it, and I shake it quite vigorously. And I don't have very many issues with any of like lumps or bumps in the protein powder.
So yeah,
Yeah.
the only reason I
I mean,
brought up why
if
I
you
looked
use
at it is
oh
because
no, I was gonna say if you use a blender, it probably will
uh,
will solve that problem, right?
yeah, the reason I always looked at the label for that and I noticed it is because
Yeah.
we had this scare in our community, in our
Oh.
African community, that when men take too much soy, we're gonna grow chests like women.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
he's like,
I've
"Oh, I cannot
I've
take
heard of
soy, I
that.
cannot." So everything, "Oh, this has got soy. I don't want to drink this."
Yeah, we've heard of that for sure. The whole phytoestrogenic issue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
the
found
fear
like
of
like
it going,
when I've gone for the ones with and the ones without, I found the ones
yeah,
without to be the
like
concept. Yeah,
chalkier,
yeah, it's a bit chalkier.
texture's not great.
Yeah.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah.
That's another thing, maybe. And then the other one that maybe you can also just elaborate on. Nowadays, you get the protein powders where they add things to it. Like you'll get the protein powder and creatine, or the protein powder and whatever else the people want to put into it. They feel like
Yes.
you need this. What is your thoughts on those? Or do you prefer to, if you want to get protein powder, get protein powder, and if you want anything else, get the other thing separately? What are your thoughts?
I would think that the latter option of getting both separately is actually a lot more economical. My guess is that those with a combined kind of composition would be a lot more number one, they would price it a lot higher. And then what I would be mindful to check is just the label, just make sure that, they put creatine in there. What creatine are they putting in there? Is it creatine monohydrate or is it some other random source? If it's some other random source, it's like, it's not that it's bad. It's just that they'll probably justify putting a much higher price tag on it. Again, for me, it comes down to this because I take these supplements so regularly. I've been taking them for a long, long, long time. And I find them to be almost essential to my day-to-day fitness goals. And just being able to eat healthy and without worry. I always go with like the economics of it. And so to me, it makes more sense to buy it separately.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I
I think
suppose.
some of these things, just be mindful what they're adding and how much they're actually charging extra. Most of the time they add the stuff that they add is probably not going to be super beneficial. I mean, like creatine is obviously going to be beneficial. That's great. But sometimes they might add other random stuff in there and it's not worth it.
Okay. The issue I take with it is that, protein is protein. You
Yeah.
can take that through protein powder, you can eat it, you can all throughout the day, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes maybe you haven't hit your macros. Macros
Mm,
do cover in a previous episode if you want to go and listen to that. But you don't hit your macros, so you think, okay, just let me just drink one of these quickly,
yeah.
and there you go. Okay. But now if you've got one of these protein powders that has all the other extra things inside,
Yeah.
I have to think twice, because it's not just a simple, oh, let me just grab and drink my protein, because now I have to take into account what else am I ingesting.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next point as well, is like when we start looking at how to incorporate protein powder into our diet,
Mm,
are there specific times that we should look to like optimal times to ingest the protein powder?
mm.
Or is it like whenever you feel is convenient for you, you just go ahead? What would you suggest in this particular kind of instance?
Yeah, that's a really good question also. The I think at the end of the day, like you mentioned, the protein powder is meant to be serving a specific purpose to top up your protein levels. So for the most part, you can probably take it any time in the day that you need to do so. So there are so many ways that this can be done, and they all kind of have their own pros and cons, I suppose. So for like some clients, because they just don't have access to very good food options, and they also don't have time to meal prep, which sounds like majority of people. What they do is they just make sure they have a protein shake before every single meal that they take. So they eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. Usually for them, it's like coffee and the protein shake is breakfast, and maybe like a
Oh,
piece of fruit, something like really simple. We just do that, or maybe a cup of yogurt and just a protein shake, things like this. Lunch, they'll just grab a protein shake before they leave the office to go for lunch. So that already tops up the protein levels, and then they can just buy a more regular outside meal, a better option still, but a regular outside meal without having to like add extra protein and all that sort of stuff. Because adding meat and adding like extra fish to like a fish soup or something, just it's like $2, $3 extra, and you don't get a lot
yeah.
more, right? And then the other thing also is like sometimes people add like stuff like eggs and all that. But if you think about it, eggs, for the amount of calories you're adding in, the amount of protein you're getting is really little. In fact, eggs are only 40% protein if you eat a whole egg. So it's a great source, it's a great food source, don't get me wrong. But if you're just looking for protein, it's not an efficient source of protein.
But it is one of the most absorbed protein, right? Out of the protein
Yeah, yeah,
sources.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just that it
just like fish
comes with
or
such a
chicken or
huge fat.
whatever. Yes, so my issue, my not issue, but the main thing I'm stating here is the
Mm.
efficiency of the thing that you're eating. Because if you're trying to control your calories so that you keep your weight in check, and you need to up your protein, you need to make sure you get more efficient sources of protein in, which is lean protein sources. Egg does not fall in lean protein sources.
What about egg white?
Now, egg is very, very, very lean,
Mhm.
but it's also not a very you have to eat a lot of egg whites, or you have to buy it in the egg white liquid form where
Mm.
you can go a whole bunch, right? So protein powder in terms of taking it, yeah, I think for most busy people, just taking it before every meal helps because number one, you already have like some food in you,
Mhm.
and then there's a bit of a time delay between when you leave the office to go to the place, and in that time delay, your brain registers the fullness from the protein shake already.
Yeah.
And you end up making that decision for lunch, it tends to be already cushioned by this protein shake that you took. The satiety levels is already much higher. You tend to choose something that's just a bit smaller in portion. So you save money, you naturally choose a smaller portion, you don't eat as much, and you still get your protein balance in. So this is like an example of just in a way gaming the system, if you will. If you know like how the body reacts, you kind of game the system this way, and you don't even have to think about it. You just make sure, oh cool, I just take my protein powder before I walk out to go and get my meal. In terms of like if you work out really hard and all that, yeah, you probably would want to take one maybe after your workout. It's very convenient to bring along. It can kickstart the recovery process quite quickly. But don't worry if you don't do that also. If the so-called anabolic post-workout window there's no such thing as like a 1 hour, 2 hour time frame or something. As long as you're eating within almost even like 4 hours post-workout, you're probably good to go. If you're a very high level individual, the meal timing does matter a bit more. Like for myself, because I do competitive like bodybuilding, the way we space out the meals, especially on much limited calories, to compensate and ensure better performance in the training, this matters a lot more. But for the average individual that is just trying to lose weight, it's probably not going to matter much.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how you want to take it. And one last point here, I actually forgot to talk about just now when we talk about different types of protein powder, is that under whey protein, there's actually various types of whey protein. So there is the whey, the general whey concentrate blend. So whey concentrate is just maybe a form of the whey protein after they filter it. It still includes some of the lactose sugars, and it still includes some of the fat. So you still have a little bit of like the calories from those, but it's still about 78 to like 80% protein, in terms of the calories. So it's still super, super great. And it's less expensive than the next option, which is whey isolate. Now, whey isolate is just that they take that whey concentrate and they filter that further, so you get something like maybe 95+% pure protein. And then the amount of grams of carbs and fats is like 1 gram, 0.5 grams, or 0.1 gram of fat, something like that, So it's really almost pure protein powder. So that's whey isolate. And then there's this other version called casein. Now, casein is not it's not taken from whey liquid itself. It's actually derived from milk. Okay, it's one of the biggest like protein molecules in milk, and it's because of that it kind of takes a bit longer to digest because there's extra steps to break it down. And so casein tends to be one of those things that for the longest time, especially in bodybuilding circles, people will say, hey, take casein before bed, so that it stays in your stomach and it digests slowly over the night. So it gives you enough nutrients and all. My practical experience with casein, and I think a lot of people echo this, is that casein tastes like crap. The texture is terrible. The flavoring of it is not the best. Often, I haven't found a casein powder that I actually enjoy taking. The only times I've ever appreciated it is when I used it at maybe more severe ends of my dieting process. And then like at that point your taste is so enhanced that even the crappiest thing also tastes pretty good. So yeah. So other than that, like I would just say just don't waste your money. You could easily take a regular whey concentrate that tastes much better. Put a bit of psyllium husk in there. Remember the fiber supplement? Go and watch our fiber episode for that, for more information on that. But put some psyllium husk and you just slow down the digestion of it. Or if you have the calories for it, whey protein plus you eat some nuts, eat some almonds, a small handful of almonds, and you're good to go. It slows down the digestion enough. You still get all these nutrients going in, and you're go. Yeah. So that's the other one where people will tell you, hey, take casein before you sleep, and all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on people that use protein powder in baked goods like muffins or?
Oh, I don't think there's any issue with that. My experience again is just the taste tends to not be the best. Like the taste always tends to suffer quite a bit. So it really depends on the quality of the protein powder you're using, or when I say quality, I mean like the brand and the flavor and the taste. Like the actual quality of the protein powder itself is probably brand dependent. There's some that have been very well established, so they have a very consistent product. There's some that are very new, and so they're a bit more unproven, but it's probably an experimentation thing. And I talked about this in the Supplements 101. It's like it's not super regulated. So there have been cases where certain protein companies, they end up doing this thing called protein spiking. And so protein spiking is basically where they take something like taurine, which is a really, really cheap amino acid, and they splice that into their whey product. So it doesn't have a taste, right? But they splice it into the whey product, all both in powdered forms. And then what it does is it still keeps the protein content high if you test it. But if you test for the individual amino acids, you find that like all the very important muscle building supportive amino acids like your leucine, isoleucine, valine, all these things will be really, really low. So the composition of the thing will be really terrible, but you still have on paper that high protein content. So this is just like stuff that they use to increase margins, save costs. And you know, if a company is found to be doing that, they get fined and all that stuff. But you know, by the FDA. But it's one of those things where you have to prove it, or somebody has to bring it up. You know, it's not, they don't go through any kind of regulatory testing for it. Yeah. Sad case, sad case. If you like my recommendation of what protein powders to get, hey, drop a comment and I'll reach out to you. I'll share those because we are not sponsored by any company, so I don't really want to give a free shout out here. Yeah, I suppose for liability or legal reasons or whatever, I don't know. But yeah. I mean, there's just a few brands that I generally take. So depending on where you're at, like in Australia, there's a certain brand here I recommend to all my friends here in Australia. If you're in other parts of the world where, you know, trade and commerce is less tightly regulated, especially with regards to supplementation, then yeah, you know, there's some very common brands you can order online.
Okay. I think in closing, we'll just maybe look at some of the potential drawbacks or considerations that people looking to take protein powder. I mean, these things could be what, like digestive issues, allergies.
Digestive issue is the big one, yeah, for sure.
And I think the other thing is also, I think you did mention this very briefly earlier, the importance of not relying solely on protein powder
Yes.
for your intake. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit more on these points.
Yeah. So with regards to protein powder, the reason why it's such a hugely nutritious source of protein is just because the amino acid profile is extremely complete and it's very, very high in terms of the protein efficiency of the item itself. But where it is really, really strong, there are some lacking points, which is some other minerals and vitamins that are lacking in them, namely stuff like iron, vitamin B, even like stuff like general folate, folic acid, even magnesium, you know, things like this, which tend to fall towards the lower end of that nutritional scale. So if you're just taking all your protein from these sources, you might be missing on some of these other elements, especially like iron and like vitamin B that you could be getting from animal meats in the in the first place. And let's say if you're vegetarian, you probably won't be too much of an issue because you'll be taking a huge variety. I hope you'll be taking a huge variety of vegetables where you get, you know, a lot of these micronutrients as well. Yeah. Again, you cannot compare, you know, as always, right? Like for some of these minerals and nutrients, you cannot really compare, especially the acid-based nutrients. You cannot really compare to, let's say, if you take animal-based meats. But if you're talking about general health and fitness and general weight loss, it's probably not something you'll be too worried about. You know, like it still serves its function relatively well. And then when you start talking about like, I really want to improve performance and all that sort of stuff, yeah, you might need to consider maybe not being vegetarian or maybe just like adjusting the variety. Like you have to be a bit more vigilant about like the variety of the foods that you're eating when you're vegetarian and stuff. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of what you miss out on. You miss out on some of these like higher levels of micronutrients that you would not otherwise get if you just take purely from protein powder. However, my experience is that not everybody takes all their protein from protein powder. You still have some kind of protein coming in from other sources. You know, you might eat a small piece of chicken for lunch, small piece of chicken for dinner. Most of the time, if you do that, plus you take a multivitamin, hey, you know, you can sustain that process for quite a long time. And if you're training pretty hard, in the gym, you're doing enough resistance work, you're taking care of your cardio fitness, you get a bit of running, get your steps in, things like this, you're probably doing like 60, 70% of what you need to do already anyway. And then the rest of it is just how much more you want to optimize above that. So I would not really let I would not let all the naturalistic fallacy zealots, right, you know, scare you into saying, hey, you know, you can't take all your protein from protein powder. I'll say like it is probably better to get, you know, half of it at least from whole food sources. But if that's not realistic for you or that affects your convenience and adherence, then by all means use the option that's more more available to you. Because getting healthy is still going to be the best thing you can do. Making sure you don't have excess fat on you, making sure that your body is has a decent composition and it's fit and it's healthy. These are the big things that are going to have a large impact, not whether or not you're getting your protein from protein powder or meat sources. It's just getting your protein in, period.
But we will caveat all this with before you go on any kind of eating plan, do consult with your healthcare
As always.
provider. Just cover
As
ourselves
always.
here.
Yeah.
Because it's always a good thing because we never know. Every case is different, right? You don't know what the person, they might be on a medication, they might be going through something, whatever. And only your healthcare provider can really discuss those matters with you. So what we are providing here is just a very general sense of advice with regards to this nutrition.
Yep.
All right. I think that covers everything. Do you have anything
Yeah.
else you want to just add in closing?
No, man. I think nothing so much related to protein powder. I would just say, I mean, there's so much more I could talk about it, but I also would love to hear listeners' questions and stuff. Like, what are people more concerned with? So if you do have that, leave it down in the comments, or you can reach out to us as well. How can you reach out to us, Mike?
They can reach out to us if you're listening on YouTube. You can reach out to us in the comments. You can reach out to us at our website itself, 40plusfit.com, which we've now recently also added in the coaching. So if you are interested to actually take on a coach, which could very well be our head coach at Twain, and you can apply for the coaching on the website too. Other than that, you can also, I think, Spotify, there's a commenting section on there. And then we also have our Instagram account that people can come, 40plusfit.com.
Yeah, wow. We are definitely getting on
We're spreading out.
all the platforms. Actually, that's not all the platforms.
We're getting there. We also have a bit of a
there.
Facebook page, but that one's been a bit in the wilderness at the moment. I don't know when last I actually looked at that, so
For sure.
I should go and it's a
I
good
believe,
reminder. Thanks for reminding me.
yeah, look, as we are recording this, I believe we're doing like a mini rebranding. You should see a new logo design, everything coming up soon. By the time you're listening to this, probably it should be up already.
Yeah, that's the hope.
That's the hope, yes. Don't hold me to it. Don't hold me to it. Maybe
So
2 episodes later.
So if you're listening on Spotify and the icon has changed, yeah, don't be alarmed. It's planned.
It's still the same people. It's still
Still
us.
the same people.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So just in closing, today we just chatted about a breakdown of protein powders and how they can fit into your over 40 lifestyle. We remember while protein powders can be a convenient way to boost your protein intake, they shouldn't replace whole food sources in the entirety, but rather be a supplement to your healthy diet. As always, so we say again, consult your healthcare provider before making any significant changes to your diet. And thanks for tuning in to 40plusfit.com. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more health, fitness, and tips. And do visit our website at 40plusfit.com for more tips. Until then,
Awesome.
stay strong and keep moving.
Awesome. See you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.